Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Glad to have everybody here. We thought we would try a Saturday session today and see what people thought about that. We've never done a Saturday workshop before, so we thought we would give that a go. Looks pretty good. We already have 57 people here. Well, now we're up to 60. So glad to have everybody here. So this is, my name is Rick Stone, and this is the Stoney Acres Gardening Growing Spinach in the Fall and Winter Workshop. So I am super excited to have you guys here because I love this time of year and I love to be able to teach you guys about year-round gardening. This is my favorite time of the year for this job that I do now. You know, this is how we support our family. And so I love this because I love teaching people about extending their growing season and, doing more with your garden. All right, well, we're up to about 70 people here, and I want to make sure that we honor your time, especially on a Saturday. So let's go ahead and kind of get moving along here. So here's what we're going to be covering in today's workshop. We're going to talk about growing spinach for 6 to 8 months out of the year, where we have a harvest for 6 to 8 months out of the year. Where you live is going to play a big role in how long you can harvest from your garden in the wintertime with the spinach planting that we're going to be talking about. Believe it or not, the colder your place is, the longer your harvest is going to be. Those of you that live like in zones 8 and 9, and I saw a few people that live in that area, your window for growing cool season crops is a lot shorter than some of us that live in the colder areas. And so believe it or not, the colder you are, the longer your harvest will be. We can usually make our harvest last somewhere between 7 to 8 months, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So we're also going to talk about when to plant so that we can make this happen, how much to plant, when to harvest, and how to protect. So that is kind of the plan for this workshop today. Now, we do have a pretty good group of people already on here. And so a couple of maybe helpful hints as we run through this. So I've got about 20 to 25 minutes worth of teaching for you. So I'm going to run through the kind of the lesson that I have for you. While I'm doing that, I have a really hard time watching the feed. If I try to watch the feed, I'll never get finished with the lesson. And so hold your questions until I'm done teaching. So if you just want to hold off on that, and then my wife AJ is going to be monitoring the comments feed, and she'll be kind of pulling out the questions for me so that we can get those answered. Another little helpful hint is if you've got a question that you want to have answered, put 3 question marks at the beginning of that. So question mark, question mark, question mark. That helps us to identify where those questions are. And then I would ask that we kind of limit the questions today to the topic at hand. So people are here to learn about fall and winter gardening. And so I want to spend most of the time and talk mostly about those. So the questions that I'm going to field will be mostly centered around that area. And then let's go ahead and get started. So what I want to do is talk to you today about how you can have 8 months worth of harvest of spinach. And then towards the end, I'm actually going to throw in a few more crops that you can do this exact same thing with. So the idea here is to be able to have an extended harvest of these crops over the wintertime. And of course, we are going to need to do some protection. So you're going to have some hoop houses or cold frames, things like that to help protect it over the winter. But depending on where you live, a lot of you ought to be able to see harvests that are there for an extended amount of time. We usually, for us, will get about 7 to 8 months. So we'll start harvesting in October. And so we'll have a harvest in October, November, December, January, February, March, April, and we usually squeak into May. So 8 months, 7 to 8 months is what we get. The colder your place that you live at, the longer that harvest is actually going to be, because we'll the longer you're in that cool season of the year, the longer you'll be able to have that harvest. But usually, we ought to be able to see 6 to 8 months worth of harvest. Now, if you live in Southern California or somewhere warmer like that, your cool weather window is much shorter which means you're not going to be able to get the extended long harvest like we do up here in the north. But you will still be able to have a really good winter crop of these different crops that we're going to talk about. So hopefully this will be beneficial to all of you and that you will have some good success. So again, how to harvest spinach for 8 months or so out of the year. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to plant at the right times, okay? And we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about how to protect from pests, because this time of year, pests can be a big issue in our gardens as we, the warmer weather brings out the pests. In the spring, when you're planting spinach, especially early on, there's not a lot of pest pressure. You'll have a lot more. And so we'll talk about how you deal with that. I'm going to talk to you about how much to plant. I want you planting a lot. We'll talk about the right times to harvest. And then we're going to talk about row covers, hoop houses, and cold frames, and how to use each of those to protect your crops over the winter. Okay. So first and foremost, let's talk about planting times. So for this workshop, I'm using spinach as the crop that we're talking about. The main crop that we're going to be covering is spinach, okay? There are other crops, and I'll get to those at the end. I'll let you know what those other crops are, but this is kind of the target planting time for all of these crops. So if you would like a full extended harvest of these crops, so fall, winter, and spring, okay, then you need to be planting about 6 to 8 weeks before your first fall frost date, okay? You have a 2-week window, 6 to 8 weeks before that first fall frost date. If you can hit that window, then you should be able to have a fall harvest, a winter harvest, and a spring harvest of spinach, okay? Now it's a pretty tight window. If you slide out of that window and get closer to your frost date, it starts to limit the amount of time that you can actually harvest your crops. So that's what we want to be targeting, 6 to 8 weeks before that frost date. Now, if you miss it, okay, you miss that window, but part of the reason why we're doing these workshops right now is so that hopefully no one will miss that window. Even those of you that are, September frost dates right now, you should still be, within that time frame and actually outside of it and have time to get planted. But if you happen to miss that, you can still plant spinach in the fall. You just need to recognize that you are, instead of having a winter crop and everything like that, that anything that you plant that's more like closer to 2 to 4 weeks before your frost date is actually going to become an overwintered crop, that the bulk of the harvest is going to happen in the very late winter and early spring. So you can plant, and we do that. We intentionally will plant some areas of spinach, in a hoop house. If we've got an empty spot in a hoop house or something like that, we'll maybe plant only 2 weeks before our first frost date. And that planting will actually just overwinter, and then that will become an early spring harvest. So you can still plant outside of that window. You just need to recognize that you're planting, instead of for a winter harvest, you're planting for a early spring harvest when you miss that window. So that's that window that you really need to make sure you hit, 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost date, okay? So let's give you an example. This is my garden. So our first frost usually lands right around October 1st, which means that we need to be planting between August 1st and August 15th, okay? That's our time frame. My preference with spinach is to direct sow those seeds out in the garden, okay? So it would be nice if you've got the space to direct sow out in the garden, because spinach is not a huge fan of transplanting. I'm not saying it won't transplant. Lots of people have good success with it, but it doesn't love transplanting. And so it's always a good idea to direct sow whenever you can. That being said, I also recognize that, like for example, for me, August 1st, I do not have a lot of space in my garden for planting. We reserve a little bit of space for some spinach and carrots, the place where our peas were growing. But beyond that, my garden is loaded. I've got my squash and my sweet potatoes and my regular potatoes and my tomatoes and all that kind of stuff. is taking up most of the space. So if you don't have the space to direct sow in your garden, you can start seedlings indoors. Same time frame. Okay, so you've got that same 2-week window, 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost. You can start seedlings indoors. And with spinach, this is one of the few crops that I will tell you you don't absolutely have to have lights. So if you don't have grow lights or some type of a seed starting setup, you can start those in a windowsill and you'll probably be okay, because leafy greens like spinach and lettuce will do okay in a windowsill. So that's our time frame. October 1st is my frost date. August 1st to 15th is when you are going to be doing that. So let's take just a quick break, and you guys tell me, throw in the comment section, what is your frost date, your first frost date in the fall, and let's do some calculations for you so that you guys have got some examples. So go ahead and throw in a few comments there, and let's see when we have those frost dates happening. Sorry, I have to wait. There's a delay here on our, there we go. Okay, here we go. So October 15th, Lisa, Mula, October 15th. So if your frost date is October 15th, then your target planting time should be about August 15th. I saw an October 23rd, so that would be about August 23rd. Here's a November 20th for Rose. So Rose has more room to plant. So she's going to be, looking at mid-September is when Rose is going to be planting. Thomas is saying December 15th. That means you're going to be planting about mid-October is when you're going to be doing that. Carmine, October 15th, so September 15th. So hopefully that gives you guys an idea of when you should be planting. You can, again, if you let it slide closer to your frost date, you risk the possibility of, maybe not having a winter harvest. You can actually, if you've got the space and the patience, you can actually let it slide a little bit before those planting times. So you could do 9 weeks or even 10 weeks before, and those would be ready sooner. The problem is that time of year it's really hot, so you're really going to have to baby those plants. But so hopefully everybody understand that's kind of our target date, is that 6 to 8 week time frame is when we want to be actually making that happen. Okay. All right. Boy, good crowd, guys. Saturday, I didn't know how many people we'd have here. There's 87, 88 of you here now. So thank you for being here. All right. So the next thing that we need to worry about is our weather conditions for spinach are a little bit different this time of year than they are in the spring. We have warmer weather, which brings along with it bugs. Okay. So for us here in Utah, we're in just south of Salt Lake City, Utah, we're going to have problems with earwigs and pill bugs and grasshoppers, leaf miners, aphids are all going to be kind of giving us grief this time of year, when we're making those plantings. And so we need to be able to deal with those bugs and those pests. And I have found a really simple way to do that. And that is by covering our beds with a light fabric row cover. So you can see in this picture, I just stick some stakes in the ground, and then I put some bottles over the top. So just like some old pasta bottles or something like that. That keeps the stakes from tearing through the fabric row cover. And then I just cover those beds and weight down the ends with some rocks or some bricks or, whatever I have. And that should do a pretty good job of limiting the pests that you have in your garden. A few other things that you might consider is maybe putting out some slug and snail traps, or some traps for like your earwigs and your pill bugs as well. You could put out a few traps that will kind of help to limit things, but usually just putting a fabric row cover over the top is going to do the job. But you need to make sure that it's a light fabric row cover. So fabric row covers are based on their weight and its weight per square yard. And so is what you're looking for here for pest protection. You want to have a fabric row cover that is somewhere between 0.65 to 0.9 ounces per square yard is how they will list those. So 0.65 to 0.9 ounces per square yard. I personally like the 0.9 ounces per square yard. That material seems to be just a little bit more sturdy. It lasts a little bit longer. My favorite varieties, one is called Agribond, the other is called Ag Fabric. Both of those are pretty good quality. But either of those is going to do a really good job of protecting your pests from your pests. Now, the other thing that is becoming more and more prevalent and easier to find is actual bug netting. So there are several companies now that are actually producing bug netting that you can buy to put over your plants. And that I have not personally used it, but I've talked to several people that have, and it's very effective as well. And so, and it lasts a little bit longer from what I understand than fabric grow covers. So that is also a good option. But that for me is the easiest way to protect your greens from pests. It's just to cover them with, and that barrier method is going to keep, it's not perfect, but it's going to keep the bulk of your damaging bugs out. And for me, especially, it's important because it keeps the dang leaf miners out of our plants. So that is what we do to keep those guys safe. Okay. Now, here's my next suggestion for you. Plant a lot of spinach. Okay. Spinach is a very versatile crop, especially in the wintertime. You're going to appreciate having a lot of spinach. We try every year to plant at least one 4 by 8 foot bed of spinach. And we're down now to just basically the two of us. We still have one that's living with us, but she doesn't eat spinach. So it's just the two of us, but a 4 by 8 foot bed of spinach does a really good job at giving us kind of a continual harvest. And that's a big, significant amount. Some years we'll even plant an extra 4 by 4 foot square of that as well. Having a lot of spinach planted intensely too. So when you sow it, ignore the rules on the back of the package. Plant it really, really close together, and you're going to be in really good shape. So planting a lot of it is an important part of making sure that you have a good supply throughout the year. So make some plans that will allow you, especially if you like spinach. And again, the reason why we like spinach so much is because it's so versatile. You can use it in salads, you can cook it, you can put it in soups. And so it's a great green to have all through the fall and winter months. And so plant a lot. That's going to be a big part of this strategy. Okay. Now let's talk about harvesting and harvest time and when that kind of starts. And here I'm going to kind of give you an idea of how it works for us. So you're going to start harvesting somewhere between 8 to 10 weeks after you've planted those plants. So you want to hold off because, remember the time of year that we're in where, you're going to be eating cucumbers and tomatoes and zucchini and all that kind of stuff. You want to hold off on your spinach until all of that stuff is done, until your frost has come, it's killed all of your warm season crops. Just wait, hold, save that stuff for later. Okay. So save your spinach for later. So we will usually, we plant on August 1st, and we will usually start harvesting a little bit about the 15th of October is when we will start harvesting. And then you need to be a little bit on the strategic side about your harvesting. We want to make sure, especially in the fall where the light levels are dropping, you want to, we don't want to disadvantage the plant by taking too much off of it. So you want to look at your plant and you want to remove the biggest leaves. And so every time you go out to harvest, you're just going to kind of go through and take the biggest leaves off, leave everything else to give it a good chance to grow. So you should have a good solid fall harvest. For us, that usually lasts from about mid-October to maybe early December. Then you're going to have a little bit of a slow time. And this is why you need to be careful with your harvesting and also make sure that you've got plenty of spinach planted, because from about mid-December, and this will vary based on where you live, but for us, about mid-December to about early to mid-February is kind of our slow time. That that time of year, there's not enough sunlight. And so if you were to take a picture of your bed at the beginning of December and a picture of your bed at the beginning of February, there would be very little growth happening. You would see very little growth. There will be some, but not a ton. And so that dead of winter time is when we need to make sure that we've kind of reserved some harvest and that we have plenty of harvest, because and then again, we're just going to go through and remove the biggest leaves, because those smaller leaves are going to take off again as soon as the weather starts to warm up and the sunlight starts to come back. So you will all of a sudden, about early to mid-February, you'll go out and go, holy cow, what happened? You'll start, as soon as we hit those 10-hour days again and the daylight breaks 10 hours, you'll start to see those plants take off again and start to put on growth. And you will have a big rush of plants that are just producing a ton of leaves in the spring. So you're going to have a good harvest in the fall. You'll have kind of a moderate harvest over the winter time, and then it's just going to go crazy in the spring. So you need to be prepared for that, because those plants are going to hit that warmth. They're already going to be a good size, and the daylight's going to come back, and they are going to grow like crazy. And hopefully, depending on your weather and what your weather's like, hopefully you'll be able to stretch that harvest all the way into May. So we go October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. So we're about 8 months. We're kind of mid of May and mid of October. So I kind of say we're 7 to 8 months is what we're actually harvesting from those beds. Now, one other little tip that I wanted to give you is you want to harvest during the winter time when it's cold. You want to make sure that you only harvest on sunny days. Okay. So go out and harvest when the sun is shining and those plants have had a little bit of a chance to warm up. The reason why is because if you pick spinach while it's frozen and bring it inside, it's going to thaw out and turn to mush. Okay. And so you always want to harvest on a nice sunny day. And so that may mean that you're only harvesting once a week or once every 2 weeks when you have one of those days that really warms up and it warms things up in your cold frames or your hoop houses. That's when you want to harvest, because if you harvest while it's frozen, it will turn to mush. If you wait and let those leaves thaw out naturally on the plant and then harvest, everything's going to be okay. And I know that kind of sounds funny, but that's the way nature works. If those leaves have been unfrozen on the plant, then they will be structurally fine and will be great to eat. Otherwise, they're going to kind of become a mushy mess if you harvest them when they're frozen. So just keep that in mind. Okay, and then let's talk a little bit about using some protection to keep our crops in good shape over the wintertime. Okay, and there's 3 different methods that we can use to protect our crops that are fairly simple and easy to establish in your garden. Now, if you have if you have a hoop house or a greenhouse, like a big high hoop or a greenhouse in your garden already, you can do this in those as well. But I'm definitely not telling you that you have to go buy a greenhouse, because I don't have a greenhouse personally. I never have. And we've been doing this for 15 years now. You don't need a greenhouse. If you have a greenhouse, great, you can make it happen in this. But here are some simple ways and inexpensive ways that you can keep those crops warm over the wintertime. And the first one is fabric row covers. But here we are talking about heavy fabric row covers. So let me take a drink here. So a heavy fabric row cover is, again, with our weight scale. So if you're buying fabric row covers, you should be looking for weights that are 1.5 to 2 ounces per square yard. Okay, that is a heavy fabric row cover. Those are going to offer lots of extra protection and warmth to our crops. So if we can use heavy fabric row covers, if you live, like I saw some people that are in zone 9 and zone 10. Here's Tanya, she lives in zone 8A. You are going to want to just have row covers. That's probably all you're going to need for a spinach crop. To protect a spinach crop is just some heavy fabric row covers. You're going to throw that on when the weather gets cold. Everything's going to be fine, nice and toasty underneath there, and you should be in pretty good shape. If you live in zone 7, that might be enough, but it really kind of depends on your zone 7. So a lot of the people that live in our area, we live in the Salt Lake Valley in Utah. A lot of our people that live in our area, their garden zone is actually 7A. We're 6B where we live, but I know what a 7A can be like. And so if you have a very rough winter, rough and cold, even though you're not getting down to those like below 0 temperatures, but it's still rough and extended cold, lots of snow, then maybe row covers are not going to be enough for you. You might need to look at some of the others. If you live in zones 3, 4, 5, and 6, row covers are going to be great. They're going to extend your growing season, but you are going to need some additional protection to help keep your crops in good shape. And a hoop house is one of the ways that you can protect your crops. So let me make this picture just a little bit bigger. So this is an example of a couple of different hoop houses that we have built over the years. The one here in the middle is just kind of a fixed hoop house that we used to build every year. We would put that together every year. Basically, it's just a structure of ribs with a ridge pole, and then you cover that with some plastic, okay? Over here on the left-hand side is the current hoop houses that we have. We actually have 2 of these. They're hinged, so they're attached to our raised beds, and they open up on hinges. But this is what a hoop house is. So basically, it's just a nice structure with some ribs on it that is attached to your bed, and then you cover that with plastic. And there's several different ways that you can build those. If you live in zones 9 and 8 and 9, a hoop house is nice to have, but it's not necessary. Usually, for those of you that live in zone 7, a hoop house may be, especially for spinach, may be all you need in your garden is a hoop house. Zone 6, we're starting to get a little bit edgy there. Your temperatures are a little bit colder. You might be okay with just a hoop house. In zones 3, 4, and 5, a hoop house is going to help extend your growing season, but you're probably not going to be able to get things to last all winter inside a hoop house. So we're going to talk about some additional protection for those of you that live in those colder zones. One thing that you should be aware of that's really handy about the hoop houses and then the fabric row cover is when it gets really cold. So when we hit that, December, January, February, really hot, really hard, cold weather, you can, inside your hoop house, you can throw some fabric row cover in there as well for some added protection. So that's extra nice. And then the last type of protection that we have is cold frames. Okay. So this is a picture of one of my cold frames that we built. This is when it was brand new. Basically, a cold frame is a box with a glass lid. Usually they are a wooden box. So we'll make those out of wood, and then they'll have some type of glass lid to them. These offer our best level of protection overall in your garden. They're going to be great for those of you that live in zones 3 through 6. You're going to be surprised at how many things will survive inside a cold frame over the winter. You can, just like I said with the hoop houses, during the coldest part of the winter, you can add some fabric row cover inside as well, and that is going to help protect and extend that season. But for us to be able to have an overall 6 or 8 month extended harvest, you do need to have some type of structure that is protecting those crops over the wintertime. So that is the next thing. Now, we talked specifically about spinach in this video, and that is our favorite crop to grow in the wintertime. Well, that and carrots. We love carrots too, but spinach is one of our favorite crops to grow. But there are actually 4 other crops that you can do this exact same thing with. So kale, Swiss chard, tatsoi, which tatsoi is an Asian green. It's kind of like bok choy, but its growth habit is more like a spinach plant. It opens up more, has more of a rosette to it. All of those, you're going to use the exact same planting times that we talked about earlier, 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost date. Give them protection over the wintertime, and you should be able to have 6 to 8 months worth of harvest from all of those plants. The last one on the list is called mosh. We also will sometimes hear that called corn salad as well. If you live in Europe, and I did see some people here from Europe, it'll sometimes be called lamb's lettuce over there. Mosh is a really hardy, really good crop, but the planting times for it is just a little bit different. It's a faster growing crop, but it also likes the cooler weather even better. So with mosh, you're actually going to start those about 4 weeks before your first frost date, where everything else is 8 weeks before. Mosh, we want to be targeting about 4 weeks before. But all of those crops, so spinach, kale, Swiss chard, tot soy, and mosh, all can grow just like we've described here. You can have 6 to 8 months worth of harvest over the wintertime from these crops. Kale and spinach especially just nail it every year when you do this. So it's just a great method. I love doing this, and it turns things into just a great garden. So in the comment section, and let's take just a little break. Let me get a drink here. Tell me which of these crops you're going to plant this fall. So which of these plants are you guys going to try and grow this fall? Let's see, spinach and kale. Rhonda says spinach and kale, both good choices. They're going to do really well. Spinach, awesome. Spinach and kale, Swiss chard added in there. Okay, so you guys are going to love this. It's just a great way to extend that growing season and to have more food for your family. So it's just fantastic. Okay. All right. So if you guys want to start, remember, we are going to field some questions. So if you want to start your questions with 3 question marks, that is how we will know that you have actually asked a question. I see that we already have some that are there in the comment section already. And so we'll kind of start fielding those. I did want to let you guys know about some upcoming things. So this is our big week when it comes to year-round gardening. Starting on Monday, our year-round gardening master course is going to be on sale to the general public. And so all of next week, we are going to be doing workshops. So I've got a workshop on Monday the 8th, Wednesday the 10th, and Friday the 12th. All of those will be at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. And Monday, we're going to be talking about the best veggies to grow for your fall and winter garden. July 10th, we'll talk about timing and when you should be getting those planted. And then July 12th, which is Friday, we'll talk about protection. And we're going to actually go into a lot more detail than I did in this video to talk about how we actually are going to be protecting those crops. So those are all upcoming. I included a link in the description of this video. So if you're watching the replay or if you just want to go back to the description page, there's a link where you can go sign up for those workshops as well. I'll send everybody an email later this afternoon to remind you and to give you that sign up link as well. But big week this week. I've got lots of these workshops coming. So we'll be, AJ and I will be pretty tired by the time this week is finished up with 4 workshops in 7 days, but I'm excited to do it. We like to do these. So, all right. Maybe in the comment section, I'd love to see how many of you think it is important to grow more food for your family and to get that season extension happening so that you're growing more food from your family. So let's give it just a second here. I am going to talk to you about my favorite topic in the whole wide world, and that is growing your own food. So how many of you would like to be able to harvest fresh food 365 days a year? How cool would that be for you? So let me tell you a story, what started us out on this journey. So it was in 2009, we were down in Southern California at one of the amusement parks with our family. And it was January that we were down there. And we noticed, AJ and I noticed in the flower beds around all of the attractions, they were growing things like kale and Swiss chard and spinach and lettuce and broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower. And we're like, wow, how cool would that be in January to be able to be growing a garden and have food that was coming out of our garden? And we were like, that is so cool. But I don't want to live in Southern California. For those of you that live in Southern California, no offense, but there is 8.5 billion people living in Southern California. I don't want to be that close to that many people. So we like our little northern area here in Utah, although there's getting a lot of people here too. So we got talking about it, and as we were driving home from Southern California, we were like, wow, we really should see what we can do about that. And so I came back, I went to the library and spent some time in the library, found some books that one by Elliot Coleman, another by Nikki Jabor, that we chose to read and to study. And we found out that it's actually possible for people that live in cold weather climates to have food to harvest all winter long. And so we were determined to make it happen. So that year, that summer, I built a cold frame and a hoop house for our garden, just one of each. And we planted our very first fall and winter garden. So that was in 2009. So this shows you the potential that we have as year-round gardeners. Since that time, in 2009, we have had something to harvest from our garden every day, 365 days a year, every day since. So for coming up in November of this year, it will be 15 years that we have had something fresh available from our garden. Any day that we wanted to, we could go out and pick. Now, did we go out and harvest every day in the wintertime? No, we don't. We usually work that out about once a week. We'll go out on a good sunny day and harvest a week's worth of spinach and kale and lettuce and carrots and bring those all in and put them in the fridge. But we have had something available in our garden for 365 days a year for 15 years now. So that kind of gives you the potential. What would that mean to the healthiness of your diet if you had that potential? So one of the things that we have noticed is we eat so much better in the summertime when our garden is loaded with tomatoes and cucumbers and melons and berries and all that kind of stuff. Now we freeze and we can, so we have those things, but we still have noticed that we don't eat as well when we don't have the fresh stuff. And so now that we have the fresh stuff, we eat so much better during the wintertime when we're eating all of that fresh produce. And just think about what that would do for you and your diet. And that's what the Year-Round Gardening Master Course does for you. And this is by far my favorite course that I've ever taught. We love this course. It was the second course I ever put together. One thing that we noticed last year as we were running the course is it was getting a little dated. I filmed it in 2015 originally. It was one of the first videos that I'd ever done. Honestly, I'm a much better teacher now. We have better video equipment and stuff like that. And so this year, we actually decided to refilm the entire course. So the entire course has been refilmed for 2024. There's one module that we haven't finished yet, and that's the fall gardening module. We're going to film that this fall when our fall garden is in. So all of the course has been updated, fully updated for 2024. And so that is one of the big advantages of this course, is that this year you get the fully updated version. And for those of you that already own the course, you get it too. So we're giving it to everybody. This course includes about 6 hours of instructions. So it's pretty in depth. I go into all of the different aspects, all of the different crops that we should be growing, and talk about, what it is that we need to be doing to have that 365-day-a-year garden. We talk about what crops to grow. There's over 30 different crops that you can grow in your garden that will last all the way through the wintertime. And so we talk about that. We're going to talk about protective structures, what you need to be doing to build cold frames and hoop houses and how to use those. We're going to talk about the planting times and when you should actually get those in the ground, because it's different depending on what crop it is that you're planting. Then we're going to talk about care and harvest, how to take care of your garden over the winter time, how much water to give it, all the different things that you need to do there. We have specific modules on fall gardening, because I know some people are not all that down with being out in the garden, like you see in this picture of me out scraping snow off of the cold frames. I know some of you may not be down with that. And so we also have put together a fall gardening module so that you can learn how to extend your garden well into the fall and early winter without doing the winter time garden if you don't want to. You may find that you love it so much that you'll end up doing it anyways. And then we also have a spring gardening module, and that one is designed to teach you how to get things going earlier in the spring. I'm actually, here in our Zone 6B garden, we're actually doing our first spring plantings in February. because of all of the different things that we have going on. So all of that is included in this course. And then during the summertime in July and August, I also do a bunch of live Q&A sessions as well. So we will do we'll do at least four. Sometimes we do as many as 6 Q&A sessions over the next 4 weeks, where you guys come in, and it's a little bit different than this. We do it on a Zoom call so that you can actually ask me the questions, and I can ask you some follow-up and get the information we need to get your questions answered. So all of that is part of the Year-Round Gardening Master Course. Here's a couple of just things that people have said about the course. Laura was a student last year. She said, this course was an absolute game changer for me. Never again will I think that the gardening ends at the end of summer. And that's one of the great things about this course is you don't have to put your garden to bed every year like most people do. Richard, who actually lives relatively close to me, says, we love our winter garden here in Twilla, Utah. The picture that's there was taken on February 20th of 2024. Little finger carrots and Bloomdale spinach harvested that day were tasty, especially the sugary sweet carrots, and we'll be growing through every winter now. It's so much fun. Thanks for offering the course. So this is just a fun course that I think you guys are really going to love, and will be very, very beneficial to you. And like I say, this is our best-selling course. We've had thousands of people now go through this course. And so I think, especially with the updated version for this year, we've got this really dialed in, and I think you're really going to enjoy this. So it's going on sale to the general public on July 8th through the 15th is when it will be on sale. And regular sales price will be $129. That's a one-time price, and then you get ongoing access. So any updates I make, so for example, everybody that bought it last year is getting all of these updates that we made for this year. So it's a one-time price. You only have to pay for it once, and then you're a member for, as long as I keep doing the course. And this is our best-selling course, so you'll be a member for a long, long time. We do have an early access special for those of you that are here in the workshop today. You can get access to this course for $99. So we're giving you $30 off the price. You can get $99 for the price. And this is for just you guys, okay? So everybody else, we're not doing these bonuses. We may do one bonus for some of them, but you guys are going to get 2 bonus courses. So if you sign up before 10 a.m. on Monday morning, July 8th, you will get my succession planting course and my 5 best food storage crops course. Both of those are $20 courses. You'll get both of those bonus courses for free as well. So you get for $99, you get the main course and then those other 2 courses as well. Total value of that package is $170, and you're going to get that for $99. But you do need, in order to get the bonuses, you do need to get signed up before 10 a.m. on July 8th, which is Monday morning. So get signed up for that. There's a link pinned in the top of the comment section that will take you over and apply that coupon code. So as we kind of are going through and answering questions, you guys can jump over and get that bot. I would love to have you join us. And we have just a fun time during that event. So AJ, I think I'm about ready. If you're about ready with the winners here, looks like we do have a winner. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead, guys. Again, buy that course. I think you're going to love it. We love teaching it, and jump over to the sales page and you can see all of the people that have taken it in the past years. Just love this course, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. So go over and get that taken care of. All right. So let's announce our winner, and then excuse me, and then we will go ahead and field some questions. Now, it looks like we've got a pretty good group of questions already. So prize winner for today gets a free copy of the Year-Round Gardening Master Course and includes those bonus courses as well. And here we go. Drum roll. The winner is Vicky Radway. Okay, congratulations, Vicky. Very, very cool. Congratulations. Hopefully you will enjoy that. And so congratulations, Vicky. And so, Vicky, here's what you need to do. Just send me an email. It's rick@ourstoneyacres.com. We will verify your information against the information that you use to log into the system. And then you will we'll get you signed up. You'll just have to go over on the platform and create an account, and then we will get you that free copy logged into your system. So congratulations, Vicki. Yeah, Nancy's there. Nancy's last year was one of our students, and she says she's going to love it. So congratulations. Okay, let's answer a few questions. So we are about 50 minutes in. Boy, we still have a good crew here too. 87 people still here. So let's go ahead, and this is what I'm going to do. I want to kind of respect your guys' time. So I'm going to try and go about 20 minutes or so here answering questions, and then we'll I think 20 minutes to a half hour is probably what we'll target here, so that you guys can get on with your day. I've got tomatoes to prune and things like that, so we want to get going on that. So let's go ahead and get some questions answered. Okay, so let's make, again, congratulations, Vicki. Let's make that go away and answer some questions. All right, so Gail is asking, will the plant dates change if you're using grow bags? No. Okay, that window is our window. And we want, the reason why that window is there is because we need, when we hit, depending on where you live, it's going to happen sometime in early November. We hit what are called the Persephone months. And that's the 3 months out of the year. And for those of you that live far south, it may not be the full 3 months, but for most of it, it's about 3 months where we don't have over 10 hours of day length during the day. And once we hit that zone, things stop growing. And so no matter whether you're starting your seedlings indoors or you're planting them directly out in the garden, you're growing them in bags or growing them in greenhouses, whatever it is, that timing window, 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost date, is the window that we need to hit. So that's the planting dates do not change based on that timing. Okay. All right. Diane is saying, raised beds, would the row cover weight change for winter? Yes. So when you're protecting from pests, you use the light fabric row cover, which is, again, 0.9 to 0.65 ounces per square yard. In the winter, you want to use heavy fabric row cover, which is 0.15 to 0.2 ounces per square yard. So you don't have to use row covers for the pest protection. You could use pest netting instead. They've got that bug netting that people have started to produce now. So either one of those, but for winter time, you want to use the heavy fabric row covers is what you're going to use to get the right level of protection. Okay. All right, Rhonda is asking, can you use a poly greenhouse materials as your row cover? So Rhonda, I'm not 100% sure that I'm following your question completely. If you're talking about like for pest protection, then the answer is no. You don't want you'll get too much heat underneath that poly greenhouse material. If we're talking about putting them on a hoop and using it as a hoop house for winter protection, then yes, absolutely, you can use the poly greenhouse material. I don't normally recommend it because it's so expensive. You can get away with just using painter's plastic, like a 3 to 5 mil painter's plastic is going to last for several seasons and be way cheaper than that poly greenhouse material. But if you've got it, you absolutely can use that to protect your crops. So yes, definitely. All right, so Linda, will spinach grow in raised bed or raised container beds during the winter, such as a Verigrow? Okay, so I'm assuming a Verigrow is one of those kind of tower type things. The answer is yes, but it also depends a little bit on where you live. So those tall structured, raised bed things will have a lot more exposure to the cold weather. When we're down in the ground or in a raised bed, we're protected from the elements a little bit more. So yes, you can grow them. They probably won't last as long. So that may be a fall crop that you're planting in there, and you'll want to maybe harvest it before the really hard cold weather comes. So, but that will also depend on where you live. if you live in zone 8 or 9 or 10, yes, absolutely, you could grow those in the wintertime. But where those of us that live in the colder weather areas are going to struggle with something that's up out of the ground and has that exposure. We need the volume of soil and ground to help protect us. Okay. Judy is asking, I have Swiss chard in my garden now. Will I need to replant the new plants or will they be okay? So Judy, if those are new Swiss chard plants, so relatively recently planted, they'll probably make it all the way to fall. Okay. If they're spring planted plants that are going to go all the way through the summer, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to go to seed before the winter happens. So you might want to be prepared with some new seedlings to put in, or direct sow some plants out in the garden, because if you've got, like right now, I have some Swiss chard in one of our raised beds that's about 18 inches tall right now. Those are not going to make it all the way through the winter. They'll bolt and go to seed in September and October, and they're probably not going to make it to the winter time. So I will be replanting Swiss chard again in August, because those plants won't bolt. They won't have the time to bolt. So that's your biggest worry, is just whether or not they're going to want to go to seed. Okay. Libby, are my instructions the same for container gardening? Yes, timing is exactly the same for container gardening. The biggest issue you're going to have with containers is, again, they're up out of the ground. And so you may not, depending on where you live, you may not have as much success in containers, just because there's more exposure to the outside elements in those containers. So you may not have as much success in the deep, hard, cold part of the winter, but planting times and everything are going to be exactly the same for a fall crop in one of those in containers. Renee, how do I handle a lot of snow cover? So can be a little bit problematic with hoop houses. My hoop houses, when we have a heavy snow, I will go out and knock the snow off of my hoop houses, because they're big structures that won't handle that weight. With the cold frames, snow can actually be beneficial for you. So snow, believe it or not, acts as an insulator. And so if you have a lot of snow, and especially, so I will time this. If we have a big snowstorm coming, and I know that after that snowstorm, it's going to be really cold. So a lot of times we'll have a big storm that comes in, and then the week afterwards, the temperatures are going to drop into the single digits and get right close to zero. I will actually leave the snow on my cold frames as extra insulation and protection. So, it kind of just depends on what your weather is like. At some point, you're going to want to get in there to harvest. And so you may need to clear off the snow. And again, remember, we only harvest on a sunny day. So you may have to go clear the snow off in the morning of your cold frame, and then let things warm up inside that cold frame so that we can harvest those unthawed. But snow is not particularly a bad thing, especially if it's offering some insulation from the really cold temperatures. So Mania is saying, do I have a video about making hoop houses? There is a video that we did last year on YouTube on making hoop houses. And then we actually have a couple of videos in the year-round gardening course on how to make different types of hoop houses. So I've got a hinged hoop house that opens up with hinges. I teach you how to make that. I go through details on how to build that. And then we kind of have some ones that are a little bit less permanent options. And so I teach you how to make those as well. Watering advice during the winter. James is asking, one nice thing about winter gardens is they don't need a lot of water. So my watering methods, now we had a very dry winter last winter down here in the valley. At least we got plenty of snow in the mountains. We didn't get a lot of snow down here in the valley. And so I actually did water a couple of times. I just have a watering can that I filled up with the spigot and watered a couple of times during the winter is all. But most winters, I actually don't even need to water. So usually from about mid-November until March, you really don't have to do any watering. There's enough ambient moisture in the air. As long as your soil was well watered before that time, you should be in pretty good shape. So in November especially, I really try to manage what's happening with my cold frames and my hoop houses. So if I know that there's a rainstorm coming in, I make sure that I just open all of my hoop houses up and let the rain come in. And even snow, I will let it, those early snowstorms in the wintertime are usually more slushy, more water content to them, melts relatively quickly. And so I will actually, I'll open up my cold frames while it's snowing, let it snow on them. Then I'll cover the cold frames. It'll get warm inside and melt the snow and water my crops. So it's relatively easy to manage watering with your year-round gardening. Middle of the winter, you're not having to worry about that at all. So yeah, it's not a big fuss. And I talk a lot about that in the course. Okay, Ricky is saying, do you need a raised bed for a hoop house to work? Really good question. No, you don't. So we actually have one raised bed that we put up every year. Exact same structure. It has the ribs, it has the ridge pole, but we put it up in our main garden, and we just use some rebar. So we have some 18-inch pieces of rebar that we drive into the ground and leave just about 6 inches up, and then we slip those hoops over the PVC hoops over the top of that rebar, and that holds it all in place. And then we'll just put the plastic over and hold it down with those, with some rocks or some posts or things like that. So yeah, you absolutely don't have to have a raised bed for that. Jeff is asking, how long can spinach last uncovered during the winter? Good question, Jeff. Depends on where you live. Somebody that lives in like a zone 7 or warmer, you're probably, you probably are going to be well into December before, you really have a problem. Zones 8 and 9, you may not even need to cover them at all. So uncovered, if they're uncovered and not getting any protection, when the temperatures start to settle in and you get temperatures that are, starting to get in low 20s Fahrenheit or the teens consistently. So when you start to see night after night after night after night of those cold temperatures, you're going to start to lose your crop fairly quickly. An occasional dip down to that temperature, like 1 or 2 nights, and then it warms back up, probably will be okay. But it's, I would imagine unprotected spinach would probably, for most people, I would imagine you'd be able to have it, late November, early December before it really starts to break down. And again, that kind of depends on what your weather is like in your area. Okay, we are an hour and 2 minutes in. I still have 15 questions here to answer. So I think we're going to start wrapping up the questions. So maybe just another 2 or 3 questions to add to it. So if you've got some, go ahead and get those popped in, but we're gonna kind of call it here at about these last 15 or so. All right, Mulu is asking, I don't have any in-ground space. I use grow bags and vertical towers. How can I protect my plants? Okay, so the vertical towers are going to be a little bit tougher. You could definitely extend your growing season by covering them with like a heavy fabric grow cover. Your grow bags, you could easily throw up some type of a hoop house structure over the top of those and use a hoop house. Cold frames are probably not really practical for that, but you could definitely put a hoop house over the top of one of those. So design a hoop house. Maybe you build it on a frame, and then you could just set it over the top of your containers, and definitely you could do that. David. Let's see. David is asking if I have any fertilizer recommendations. So the main fertilizer that I use, I honestly don't fertilize very much because I try to just trust my soil. I take care of my soil. We put plenty of compost in. I do occasionally use some fertilizer for things like corn and onions and garlic because they're a little bit higher nitrogen demanders. And I will usually use like a fish emulsion for that. So that's usually what I will use is just like a good balanced fish emulsion, or depending on what I'm trying to accomplish, maybe a high nitrogen version of it. I do occasionally will use, like, especially with my onion beds, I'll use like a dried product. Joby's has a good product. There's a new company that I'm maybe going to start working with. I'll let you know more about that. They've got a dried product that's made out of chicken manure that that I may be trying as well. So just something good, solid, organic. There's quite a few good organic fertilizers out there, but usually my go-to for fertilizer is going to be a fish emulsion. So that's what I will be using there. Okay, Nancy, who's already a member of the Year-Round Gardening Master Course. How do we protect against aphids towards the spring? So hopefully your management in the fall has prevented you from having aphids in the spring. So for the plants that are prone to aphids, so for me, that's kale especially, and then all of the other broccoli family plants, I immediately cover them with either a bug netting or a fabric grow cover. So I get those covered immediately as soon as I plant them. And so if the idea is if they never got in there, then they shouldn't be there in the spring either. So if they didn't get in the fall, they shouldn't be there in the spring. So that's my main management, is just barrier protection, keeping them out. If you do end up having some aphids showing up in your cold frames and hoop houses, and you should be out monitoring that and watching for that, get on it quickly. You can use an homemade insecticidal soap will be a good organic solution. If they really get out of control, you can use some neem. I'm not a big fan of neem because it's a little bit broader spectrum and can affect some of your beneficial plants as well. But if it gets way out of hand, you could use some neem as well. But usually I'm just trying to keep them out. And so if you immediately in the fall cover those with a fabric grow cover, whether it's over your hoop house or whatever you're doing, then that should keep you from having problems in the spring. Not 100% guaranteed, but usually it will do that. Okay, Renee, in zone 5B, if I don't have cold frames, how late can I garden without them? Next year will be different. So Renee, first off, don't shy away from a hoop house. So you can put together a hoop house for $25. Just some PVC posts, a little bit of a ridge pole, throw some plastic over it. And in zone 5, that should extend your growing season well into December and maybe early January. Okay. With a few crops, you'll probably get through the winter. So Swiss chard, tatsoi, kale, carrots, all would probably still make it through the winter in just a hoop house. So it's when we start getting into the other, spinach and all of the other Asian greens and things like that you'll have a little bit more of a struggle. But if you don't have a cold frame, but you want to just cobble together a hoop house, and I teach you how to do that in the course. You can just cobble together something, and as long as it's relatively secure to the ground, you'll be surprised. There are some crops even in zone 5B that you'll be able to get to overwinter in a hoop house. Ultimately, cold frame is going to be better for you, but you should be, with just some simple protection like that or some fabric row covers, in zone 5B, I would imagine you're going to stretch things out easily into early to mid-December without much of a problem. It's when the really cold weather, that January freeze and the February freezes that come in, that's when you're going to start to have big problems. So, but yeah, the fabric grow cover by itself is going to add 6 weeks to either side of your garden harvest season. So definitely you can do that. All right. Do winter crops need to be fertilized? No, you don't need to. I don't fertilize hardly ever. Just when you plant your winter crops, you are going to put some compost in at the time of planting. If your soil is really bad on nutrients and you've had a soil test done, then maybe you'll do a little fertilizing when you plant and when they're growing. But during the winter, one thing that you guys need to understand, plants don't grow during the winter. Okay, we get them ready and then we keep them in the cold frames in the hoop houses. They actually don't grow during the wintertime because there's not any sun. Okay, there's not enough sunlight for them to actually do much growth. So they do all their growing leading up to the winter, and then we kind of go from there. Okay, so yeah, you don't need to do any fertilizing during the wintertime. So Barbara is saying she uses tulle as a roll cover. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine for pest protection, but it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be heavy enough for winter protection. You will need to have some of those fabric row covers that are designed for winter, but tulle would be fine as a fabric row cover. You may find that buying the fabric row cover or the bug netting might be a cheaper overall solution than tulle because it's designed to last a little bit longer. Kim is saying, I will try and growing carrots and mosh along with spinach. Yeah, those are all going to be good solutions. So they'll all grow well together. We do those every winter. Sandra, I've considered carrots, beets, and parsnips as well to overwinter or winter sow. Would this work well under a cold frame? Yes. We grow carrots. So carrots and parsnips are very hardy. Okay, and will do really well. Beets, not as much so. Okay, they won't stand up to the cold as long. So if you're going to plant those 3 plants, prioritize eating the beets first. So get the beets eaten up early in the season. The carrots and the parsnips should last all winter long in a cold frame and will be amazing. Carrots and parsnips could actually survive just out directly in the garden. The problem is it's a pain in the neck to harvest them when they're just directly in the garden because the ground's frozen. Excuse me, in a cold frame, they're actually going to be in pretty good shape all winter long and a little bit easier to harvest. But yeah, those are amazing choices. And those will actually be on the list we talk about on Monday, or at least carrots is on that list as one of the best ones to grow. All right. So we're about an hour and 10 minutes in, guys, and I've got 9 more questions here to answer, and then I think we'll call it quits and let you guys get off and work in your gardens. So Deb is saying, do you start seeds indoors in February or direct seed? Both. So I actually start my earliest seedlings. I start in mid-January. We'll plant some lettuce and kale indoors, and then transplant those out in late February. But in February itself, we are actually in the cold frames as we start to clear out space, especially like, for example, the cold frame where our carrots are. As we're harvesting our carrots, we're clearing out that space. I will replant that to like spinach, lettuce, other leafy greens as for us as early as, like February 20th. I think this year I planted spinach again on February 20th. And that then gives us a little bit extra time for spinach harvest a little bit later on. So yes, both. I do both, but I do a lot of seed starting. So my seed starter's right here, and it runs almost 365 days a year. So Dawn, when should you start planting winter carrots in zone 6? Same rule. So I'm cheating. You should come to next week's workshop, but we'll talk about it more there. But carrots are the same. 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost date is when you're going to be planting your carrots as well. Libby, are the directions the same for the containers? Yes. So timing is going to be the same. You'll have a little bit harder time protecting those as we mentioned earlier, but yes, your timing is going to be exactly the same. Can spinach grow in 10-gallon grow bags and be placed in a greenhouse? Yes, absolutely. Great idea. Especially in a greenhouse, you're going to have plenty of protection in there. The biggest problem with containers is that they're out of the ground and exposed to the open air and the wind and things like that. So if you've got them in a greenhouse, that should help. It still won't, because they're in containers, it still won't be quite as effective as if they were in ground, but you should have pretty good success with that. So yeah, it shouldn't be a big issue there at all. Barbara, does spinach, chard, and kale need to be rotated, or can I plant them in the same raised beds as I did last year? Ultimately, yes, they ought to be rotated. There's not a lot of soil-borne diseases that affect those three plants. Spinach and chard are in the same family. Kale is in a different family. I'm a big fan of crop rotation, but I also recognize that in a small garden, it's sometimes really hard to do. So do your best, but I'm less worried about Swiss chard, kale, and spinach than I am tomatoes. Tomatoes you need to be rotating. Potatoes you need to be rotating. Peppers you need to be rotating. I'm less concerned about those leafy greens than I would be some other things. Manya is asking which is better for spinach, zone 7B, a hoop house or a cold frame? Either one for you. You should be okay with either one. Ultimately, a cold frame offers more protection, even in 7B. But you're going to be pretty happy with what a hoop house does in 7B. You should be happy. So it's going to save you money to do a hoop house. So in my situation, if I were in 7B, I would probably start with hoop houses, see how they do. If I'm not really happy with the results, maybe I would build a cold frame later. But yeah, you're going to be pretty happy with a hoop house. Judy is saying my Swiss chard is only about 4 inches tall. Late planting maybe this year. Maybe it'll be okay. Not having to replant for winter. Maybe. Just keep an eye on it. I might still throw in a few. I'm assuming, what did you say? You didn't say what zone you were in. If they're only about 4 inches tall, pretty good chance. The problem is they're going to be pretty big by then. And so you're definitely going to have a hoop house. You won't be able to put them in a cold frame. I grow my Swiss chard in a cold frame because we keep it, we harvest it pretty hard, and so it stays small. So kale or Swiss chard that's 4 inches tall now, it's going to be pretty big. You're definitely going to have a hoop house for it. But yeah, I mean, you're right on the edge. We do still have quite a bit of warm weather that may cause it to bolt. So just keep a close eye on it and see if you need to do that. Barbara, can I use some old horse manure in the beds for winter sowing, or is that unnecessary? As long as your horse manure would just kind of be treated like compost. It just needs to be well composted. So you said old horse manure, so I'm assuming that you know that and you understand that. Horse manure can be very what we call hot, not physically hot. It's high in nitrogen, and so you could burn your plants if it's too fresh. So as long as it's well composted and is broken down and aged, then absolutely you can use that as an amendment. There's actually some fun stuff. If you've ever read Elliot Coleman's book, he talks about in France they used to do these market gardens in the wintertime, and they would actually use horse manure, and they would put it. They would put cold frames over the top, but they would dig down about 12 inches and put fresh horse manure, about a 6-inch layer of fresh horse manure in the bottom of that cold frame, and then put the soil back in. And that horse manure would decompose all winter long and produce heat. But they put a 6-inch layer of soil over the top to help protect the plants from the hotness, the nitrogen hotness of that horse manure. So there's fun things that you can do with manures for sure. All right, and then this is our last question that we're going to answer. So Pan is saying, I have an 8-foot tall trellis wall and I grow vertically. How can you protect that garden? So you're not going to be able to go all the way through the winter unless you live in a really warm zone. So if you're like zone 8 or above, you may be able to grow in the wintertime in those. But you won't be able to make it all the way through the winter with those. You definitely could get some fabric row cover and figure out some ways to drape that over. And that would help to extend your growing season. I would imagine that you should be able to get, things extended out maybe an extra 6 weeks or so using some heavy fabric row cover during the night. But ultimately, something that high up in the air is going to be exposed to too much of the cold weather for you to be able to effectively winter garden in those. But you should be able to extend your growing season significantly using some fabric grow covers for sure. Okay. All right, my friends. Thank you. This has been a great workshop. Lots of people still here. So thank you for being here today. Just a quick reminder, and let's see, I can't remember if I have a slide on this. No. So we do have 3 other workshops happening this coming week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. So obviously I've been talking for too long. 2 p.m. Mountain Time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're going to be doing more year-round gardening workshops and talking about different topics. So if you haven't already signed up for those, you can sign up in the link down below and get signed up for those. And then please remember to join the year-round gardening master course. So we have the special early access special. So I haven't opened it up to the public yet. This is just for you guys that we're here today. Early access special. $99 is the sales price, and you get those 2 free bonus courses. So my succession planting course and my 5 crops to grow for food storage course, you get those 2 bonus courses if you get signed up before Monday morning. Okay, so $99. We would love to have you come and join that course. I know you're going to love that. We teach all of this stuff in greater detail and just really kind of nail it for you and bring it in. So we would love to have you join us in that course. So link for that gives you the discount is pinned in the comments, or if those of you that are watching the replay, it is just should be down below the screen there for you. Click over and get signed up for that, because we would love to have you come and join us in the year-round gardening master course. Tons of fun. Over the next 4 weeks, we do all those live Q&As, have lots of fun events. I think you're just going to dig this course. It's a lot of fun. So get signed up for that at the link down below. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you guys. These workshops are a lot of fun. And like I say, we're going to hit it hard next week, 3 more workshops for you. So come and join us. And we'd love to have you there. Okay. All right. Thanks again for being here. Appreciate all of you for being a part of this, and everybody have a great weekend. I'm going to go prune some tomatoes and hang out with my grandkids. So we'll talk to you later. Happy gardening, guys. See you later.